Welcome back to Hillbilly Pillars and my ranking of Bob Dylan's studio albums. We've gotten all the way up now to number 15. As I was reviewing my list, I realized at this point for me, these are all just all-timer personal favorite albums. They would be way up on if I just had to do all my all-time favorite albums. From this point on, I just love all these. They're like almost another Bob tier for me. And so coming in at number 15, going back to my birth year, 1975's The Basement Tapes. Bob Dylan and the band lived in Saugerties, New York, Woodstock. They would get together in this house they like to call Big Pink. It was a pink two-story house, had a basement in it, and they were just running through all these songs Bob was experimenting with at the time. And those sessions, many of them were recorded just for posterity's sake, or just to something to go back and listen to as far as ideas and that kind of thing. And then those tapes eventually leaked out and became the first kind of mass pop culture bootlegged music. The most known title that it went by was The Great White Wonder, and it would have various songs, but consistently a lot of the same. And the popularity was so strong, it eventually just led to them being like, let's just put out our own version, because if somebody's going to make some money off this, we should. And this was put together. There's actually songs later recorded by the band that are added, and that's a detriment, understandably, to some people about the kind of the purity of the idea of the whole thing. To me, I mean, it's all I've ever known. So it's like I couldn't imagine the Basement Tapes without those band songs. So it's kind of, I can see how both are true. I can see how it does kind of like deflect from the purity of like the original vibe of what was going on in that basement and those recordings. But it all adds up to me to an album that I love. It's widely regarded as kind of like the spiritual and musical kind of essence of the idea of Americana music, and a ghost that a lot of popular acts that kind of fall under that banner chase. There are a lot of very renowned and known great artists in their own right who source this as just like a wellspring of inspiration. There's an odd peculiarity to a lot of the tracks, and it was known at the time as rock was kind of getting heavier and going in a psychedelic route, popular wise and radio wise, that this went the other way, back to the roots of once again just the weird the weird late 1800s kind of energy of what was the United States at the time. I do. It's funny. I think I find myself at the same place every time. I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of in the mood for that. I want to hear the Basement Tape. So I put it on, and I think, I'll maybe it's 2 LPs, and maybe towards the back end of just the first side. And I'm like, maybe, there's some people who feel like this is kind of like maybe one of the most important recordings ever made. And I kind of feel that way every time I listen to it. It kind of talks me into it. I kind of, when I'm outside of listening to it, I don't really think I hold it in that regard, but it's almost invariably when I listen to it, I'm like, man, I get it. This is like, it is like from some sort of like wellspring. It is almost like its own music. I've got one of the things, I took some notes this time I wanted to make sure I mentioned. One of my hot Bob Dylan takes, I used to put it this way, that there are no covers of Bob Dylan songs that are better than the original. But I think that kind of gets into the best vibe, and that's also just stating a preference as a fact, which I don't know why it bothers my wife that it bothers me so much, but I just, it's kind of like, that is what the internet is, but that's just, I don't do that. I will put it this way. there are no covers of Bob Dylan songs that I prefer to the original, personally. That's just me. But on that note, my favorite, and has been for a while, cover of a Bob Dylan song is from this. It's Going to Acapulco by Jim James, and I may mispronounce the band Calexico. I think that's it. And it's a live version from, I believe, like a Newport. And it is, I mean, it's very true to the original recording, but Jim James sings his ass off on it, and it's played so well, and the horns on it and all of it. Ugh, it really gets to the heart of what's going on in these peculiar tracks. But you have songs like one of my favorite oddball Bob songs is Apple Suckling Tree. What a peculiar piano riff song that is. Tiny Montgomery. Yay Heavy and a Bottle of Bread is almost just absurdism. $1 Million Bash, the opener, Odds and Ends on this, just strange songs. Please Mrs. Henry, I mean, songs with very thinly veiled references to needing to take a piss and being drunk out of your mind. And I love the Basement Tapes, and it is at number 15 on my list of favorite Bob Dylan albums. Now, coming in much later at number 14. Okay, man, the years go by. This seems like such a recent release to me, but it's been a while. And that is 2012's Tempest. Part of the latter-day Bob canon. Very well reviewed upon its release, even by, modern review sites. I've kind of mentioned that about other recent Bob releases. You go back to some of the venerated places, Rolling Stone, they'll almost always give favorable reviews to these legacy acts. But, just across the board in modern things, another really well-reviewed later career Bob Dylan album. It is, I think, the most raw his voice has ever been, to a point. I think in a couple of places it might be even a little distracting for me that it's so raw, and I'm a Bob Dylan singing fan. The way he gets across emotion and the essence of songs in his singing. But there are a couple places on this where it is ragged and raw. One of the things that stands out to me on the album Tempest is the title track. It's the penultimate song, the song Tempest. It is, I say this with humbleness because this is a big deal. And actually, running down this list, I realize there's a number of videos that are going to spawn off from this that I'm going to want to do. And one of them is, I want to do a ranking of Bob Dylan's album closers. And then also I want to do a ranking of his epics. And this would fall under the epics. A lot of them overlap. Interestingly enough, you would kind of think this would have closed out the album, but the tribute to John Lennon closes it out, which that you also understand. But anyway, this is my favorite epic long Bob Dylan song, and I know what that means. I am considering Sad Eyed Lady of the Lowlands and Desolation Row, and for me, Brownsville Girl, and in that. But the meshing of the story of the Titanic set to the traditional, chord structures of the Carter Family song, mixed with Bob tossing in like references to the characters from the film about the movie. You mentioned, Leo and Cleo, and like how he kind of gets meta there, and just verse after verse. I don't know, I think there's like 50 something verses in the song, all piled on top of each other. And but he comes back to this refrain of the watchman, sleeping as this tragedy's unfolding. And those returns and those refrains in the song, the watchman, he lay dreaming of all things that can be. He dreamed the Titanic was sinking into the deep blue sea. And just those things, there's something I find very profound and just kind of like a summary of the human condition that he seems to encapsulate in just this one song. And then that, it goes very deep for me. It is, I listen to it often. Another real standout on this, and it's mentioned in a lot of people's like favorite, when they're talking about like, these are some of the best later career Bob Dylan songs, is Long and Wasted Years. It's a really interesting structured song. It has no chorus. It has no bridge. It's just got this descending heavy guitar riff that runs through the song with these verses. And to me, it's like a coda to Idiot Wind or like some of these hard lost relationship songs. I think Long and Wasted Years is just a standout Bob Dylan track. And, just really, it's a real harsh kind of tenor, a lot of blood and death. Once again, kind of like I mentioned previously in World Gone Wrong. I am a real big fan also of Tin Angel. That's a great song. I like Scarlet Town. It was a long gap. This was what came before all the Sinatra songbook albums. From 2012 until Rough and Rowdy Ways. So, I mean, he toured this a lot and played these songs a lot. It's almost a joke now because it's been part of the ongoing Rough and Rowdy Ways show too, as Early Roman Kings. I mean, it's kind of like a joke among Bob people like, ooh, I hope he plays Early Roman Kings because he always plays that. But Pay in Blood and Narrow Way, these are just night after night songs. So Bob, I obviously dug it. And Tempest 2012. Now, I do love this record. And that is number 14. Number 13. Some folks have this low. My hat is from the Jokerman podcast, and they're particularly unfavorable of this album. They don't really like it, and their whole kind of shtick is that they approached like going deep dive on Bob Dylan after his 60s stuff. So they were kind of like, their whole thing was like, hey, no, pay attention to this stuff. But this one, they just, this was kind of the one the two guys from there were in agreement being down on, and they're kind of rough on. So that's kind of fun, because just like the list I'm doing, it's always fun to disagree. But we're going back to 1970s New Morning. Of the Nashville skyline, self-portrait, that whole kind of post-motorcycle accident, country roots type of thing he went through. This is far and away my favorite. A number of the songs were intended and written for a play. I can't remember what the name of it was or what it was about. But one of the things I really like about this is we learned later, once, I don't know if it was health issues or something, and Bob stopped playing guitar and just toured only behind his piano. It's been that way for a long time. This is Bob Dylan's piano album. He plays a lot of piano on this, which I really dig his groove and the way he plays on this. And there are just some serious personal favorites in this. I've always loved Day of the Locust, the song he wrote about receiving an honorary degree from Princeton, I believe. The vibe of Time Passes Slowly and Went to See the Gypsy and Winterlude all back to back. I think maybe those were songs for that play. And then again, I might be wrong about that, but those kind of seem to be like a 3-song together thing. I wouldn't listen to them apart, and they just really have a cool kind of country rural vibe to them that I really love. I have never been a big fan of the scat singing If Dogs Run Free. I don't hate it. He did actually play that live. I'm not sure if that was just a one-off or a number of times, but he did revisit If Dogs Run Free, which I thought was fun. You get to the backside, New Morning, the title track, and Sign on the Window. I'm referencing my notes. One of the things I noticed as I was looking online, none of these tracks even get to 4 minutes. So it is very much in that way like a classic country album, like any of those Buck Owens records. You just didn't waste your time. They're almost like, that was more bent around the single was the thing, and so those songs would be radio friendly. But none of the songs even reach 4 minutes. I don't think there's any other maybe Nashville Skyline. I don't know. The first one may hit the duet with Johnny Cash. It's a little slow. I might run out past 4 minutes, but they're all short and sweet. One of the things I thought about when doing this was Timothy Chalamet, in the A Complete Unknown movie, just kind of a legendary press tour that he did. I mean, he's kind of hard to read. You're almost like, is it all just like an act? But I think he genuinely did get kind of lost in Bob's music, which I think is fun. You can see it as like a young person who's like, no, really, like, he also did all this kind of stuff. And he performed as a musical guest on Saturday Night Live, in which he was also, the host, backing once again during this insane press tour. He's doing all this cool stuff for the movie. And he did as obscure a Bob track as you could pick, Three Angels. And he like sat down and like riffed it out. And I was just like, man, I am like watching one of the 4 or 5 biggest movie stars in the world live on Saturday Night Live doing Three Angels. I could not have been more in. I think it was so cool. Go here on YouTube and check it out. I just thought, like, wow, you could not, once again, you couldn't have handpicked a more crazy obscure track that was also cool. There's of course The Man in Me, which was featured in The Big Lebowski in the opening scene of the bowling montage, that will kind of stand the test of time. And it is like, and you go to like the stream numbers, it's that, and then the rest of the album kind of all just in second. The opening song, If Not For You, is kind of like a pretty radio friendly vibing Bob song that George Harrison ended up doing as well. But there's something in the rural country energy of this I've always loved. I just adore New Morning. And that is number 13. All right. Got 2 more left on this chapter before we get to the top 10. Number 12. I think this could be the one, I don't know, that would be most off of like where other people's rankings would be. I think if you did it like numerically, I think most people would have this a lot lower. This is, once again, highlighting favorites. I've just always loved this record. And that's at number 12, and that is Shot of Love. Shot of Love. His last foray in his Christian music phase. There's something kinetic and alive about the sound of it, about the playing and the singing on this, that I think they just got right. I know he's mentioned it. Now, I've said this in other videos I've done about Bob. Is he just pulling your leg, or is he being authentic? And I usually think kind of when he's talking about songs, maybe not his own as much, so I'm already going against myself. He's pretty sincere, but he's always, in the few times he's spoken about this album, he's been very defensive of it, that he really liked it and was really happy with where it ended up. You got the opening, Shot of Love, Heart of Mine. It's a really great track. I really like it. Watered Down Love is a rocker. This is a song I love, just you're rocking out to. Lenny Bruce, about the comedian, is a peculiar song that he revisited often. Kind of takes it from the standpoint of he was a rebel because he wasn't scared of the things he was able to make fun of. Really way up in the echelon of just vitally important songs to me is In the Summertime, a brief ode to like a point in time in which a love in his life was in bloom. And some people have interpreted that as he was coming out of this as like his founded relationship with Jesus, the relationship that he found. It's such a gorgeous rumination, and kind of the song I want to hear whenever I'm thinking about an old friend, or like kind of have nostalgia for an old relationship in a good way. In the Summertime moves me deeply. And then there's the closer of this album. Is Every Grain of Sand Bob Dylan's finest song? It could be. And I've mentioned I'm getting to go see him a couple of times here coming up. in April of 26. If the video's watched way in the future or whatever, but on the Rough and Rowdy Ways tour, and I've seen a number of the dates. And he has been very consistent about his set list, which is a little disappointing. One of the cool things about going around and seeing Bob was, night to night, there's so much, you never knew what you were going to see. That energy is out of it, but it has created like a tightly focused, well done show, I think. So I think there's less on these tours of like the off nights that he can be infamous for. Some people say it's the worst thing I've ever seen, and a lot of that's where your headspace is, what your expectations are, those kinds of things. But I've seen Bob enough. There's just some bad nights, and then there's some nights when he's obviously tuned in and like that kind of thing. But he closes every show, and has for years now, with Every Grain of Sand, and I personally. And also considering, his focus on album closers, I don't think anyone has as many great ones. And I just, that can't be happenstance. He has to have consideration in the way he orders his albums. And then these songs, and he has to think, this is the album. These are the songs going to kind of be the summary and the end point of this record. And I love the idea that through all of his journeys and kind of the essential thing maybe he's always tried to get to in his journey, in his songs, and in his life can be encapsulated in the song Every Grain of Sand. I've gone from rag to riches in the sorrow of the night, in the violence of the summer's dream, and the chill of a wintry night. I'm hanging in the balance of the reality of man, like every sparrow fallen, like every grain of sand. The harmonica solo that comes before that final verse, to me is, I think, Bob Dylan's finest musical moment. It is, it just, in the scope and sweep of this song, it says it all just by his playing and the intonation and passion and heart in the playing. And Every Grain of Sand is an all-timer song. And once again, I combine that with, I finally recently got the opportunity to see Van Morrison, which for me, if you're artist rankings, whatever, for me, it's Bob is 1A and then Van Morrison is 1B. Used to be Bob and then a big gap, but Van over the last, 5 to 10 years of my life is up there. And Van closed that show with a song of his, In the Garden, which is very similar, kind of a larger, not necessarily directly God, but like a spiritual kind of encapsulation. And to have seen those two artists recently, and for that to have been the songs they closed, was just a really deeply meaningful thing to me, very profound, and I'm always be grateful for it. So at number 12, is I believe it was 1980, is Shot of Love. And that leaves number 11. This did not make my top 10. Widely considered one of the greatest albums ever made. And that is, where are we at? They're all like within a 4-year span of these bad rascals. What, I don't know, 1964, 1965. I should probably know this. I lose my Bob cred. Anyway, bringing it all back home at number 11. I will start off why I'm broken and this is not in my top 10. And that is, there are just 2 tracks back to back I have never much cared for. And that is Outlaw Blues and On the Road Again. And, I think for me, this is more of a detriment than I think I'm discovering a lot of people on the Vinyl channel. I've done a thing where like this one song and they're like, it's like for me, like album openers and that kind of thing. And like, that'd just be this one song. And I consider that maybe too much in the flow of like when I want to hear an album. And, it's like, oh, just skip them, man, or that's okay because the album also has these. And there's no greater, I don't think, reference point, maybe one, it's yet to come in this list, of, yeah, but this album has these, but those two songs. So, I mean, that's like a considerable part of the album. I'm just, I'm not highly interested in listening to. But the rest of it can still skew all of that and bump it all the way up to number 11 on my list. Kicks off with Subterranean Homesick Blues. She Belongs to Me and Maggie's Farm and Love Minus Zero start the album. That's absurd. And then you get, to me, in my vinyl listening, it's another thing doing these pop things. I'm like, ooh, I want to do my 10 favorite vinyl sides. So that's like a cool thing I think about getting into vinyl records, is like the appreciation of the sides of albums. And to me, you could have more, but I think for me, Bob inarguably has two, maybe three all-timers. And, but I think number one for me is side two of Bringing It All Back Home. And it's just him, acoustic. And that's the last, it's the last time that'll be the case until, I guess, Good As I've Been to You. And that is Mr. Tambourine Man, Gates of Eden, It's All Right Ma, and It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. That is a murderer's row. Each song kind of lyrically, structurally incomparable. Every song, all four songs on that side. It's All Right Ma, often widely referenced as, including Bob Dylan. There's the documentary of the Scorsese When No Direction Home, I think, and he starts quoting from that song. Or maybe I get this stuff mixed up being a Bob fan. There's an interview he did also in 60 Minutes, and he's quoting this, and he's like, I don't know where that came from. Like a lot of songwriters will allude to that. I was just a conduit. It was like a stream of consciousness thing. And all I was doing was just putting the pen to paper, but I don't know where that came from. And they reference that as, out of his entire catalog, It's All Right Ma might be the most mind-bogglingly badass lyrical song in all of his works. It is a insane side two. It's an all-timer. And to think, he did that, and then his All the Way Electric was coming. So that was that's the table setter. That's remarkable, man. Bob at this time, there's a few acts, the Beatles just as an existing entity, as far as a hot streak and a run, just that they existed, and then they ended when they did. Their entire existence is an insane hot streak. I know that. I think a CCR, there's the 2 or 3 year run, and you take the best 15 songs John Fogerty wrote in that 3-year span. That's absurd. But Bob in this time was an alien, and So there we are. That takes me to number 11. Man, oh man, oh man. We just went through Bringing It All Back Home, and I've still got 10 albums by the same guy that I have ranked as more favorite. Good old Bob. Once again, like I keep saying in these videos at this point, for anybody who's been along for the ride, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time when we get into my top 10 favorite Bob Dylan albums.